Okay, we are on 26b, 1 Chaf Vav Amud Bet. We left off with seemingly an ocean of options in understanding what this concept is of the Kiddusha, of the Bet Knesset. Because we talked about money, and then we talked about bricks, and then we talked about even the earth upon which the synagogue was resting on. And then we get thrown this like grenade into the whole situation where we're meant to understand that it makes a difference how the sale occurs, and it's not really only about whether or not there's actual true sanctity for the object or the Bet Knesset so we're kind of a little bit stuck, and we don't know exactly how to understand what is this Kiddusha that we're talking about when we talk about the Kiddusha, the Bet Knesset, and how does that relate to the money, the bricks, the land itself. Okay, so we are exactly where we need to be in that confusion, because what we're going to see is the next Gemara is going to lay us a little bit of a roadmap. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava. Rava says, Hi Benek Beknishta, this Bet Knesset that we're talking about, with regards to selling it in the Mishnah, Chilufa v'zibuna share, to exchange it for something else, right? Like that's lachlif. Zvune means to sell. That's why in Arabic we say a customer is a zbun, right? Because that's what the zvune means, to sell. Okay, so people don't often realize that the commonality of those terms. Okay, so this Bet Knesset chilufa v'zibuna share is allowed. Ogura mishkuna asur. Let's say you want to rent it from the Lashon agra. Okay, you want to rent it, or you want to be able to use it, sell it as you have put it up for a mortgage, mashkon. Then it's asur. You're not allowed to do that. Now the Gemara is going to ask, what difference does it make? If I could sell the Bet Knesset, then why can't I rent it or mortgage it? What's the difference? The Gemara answers, bikdushata ka'eh. The synagogue, when it's only being given out for a short period of time, i.e. rental, or it's being mashkon, so the time is not actually set, but it will depend on when we come up with the money to be able to redeem the mortgage. This is not a true mortgage, mashkoneh. Mashkoneh over here means, more accurate translation would be as collateral. So we're borrowing money for the community by putting up the building of the synagogue as collateral. So the person who's using it as collateral has the right to use the synagogue. But in each of those cases, either where it's rental and it's time-based, or where it's collateral and it's financial means-based to be able to go back and get it and redeem it back, in either one of those scenarios, we find ourselves in a place where the Bet Knesset really has an underlying purpose, and that is that it will then go back at the end of that time to its Kiddusha. It's going to be used again as a synagogue when it's finished being rented, or when
it's not being rented for a secular purpose. If I have an event in my shul, it still has Kiddusha or not?
That's not rental. That's you're using a room. Let's say as an example, so I have a bar mitzvah. Right. So you're renting I don't know that's renting the Bet Knesset. And as well, that's the hall in the synagogue. Okay, we're talking about over here the actual synagogue. So a more accurate question of those lines would be when I rent it for a wedding, as an example. So the actual main sanctuary, is being used and cannot be used for classes or for tefillot during that time. But again, it's not a real rental, because you're not renting the synagogue. You're having an event in the synagogue. Okay, but in a scenario where you were actually renting out the synagogue to a library, to someone for a warehouse, whatever the case might be. So in those cases, you can't rent it out. Why? Because since in the rental, the Kiddusha is still there because it's going to go back to its Kiddusha. So since that's the case, we don't find ourselves in a situation where we would be able to use it for a mundane purpose. Because since it's going to go back to the Kiddusha is not paka. It doesn't come off. The Gemara now continues. Livne nami. So now, what about my tama? The Kiddusha tekai. It still stays as Kiddusha. Livne mai. What about the bricks of the synagogue? Now, you're already hearing in the back of your mind our conversation earlier about using the bricks and the beams for the second synagogue. Remember that? The Gemara says, Chilufinu uvzvuninu share. To swap them or to sell them, you're allowed. Ozifinu asur. But to lend them to be used to build something, that was asur. Now that sounds like a weird thing to us. Because what does it mean you're lending a brick? What are you lending bricks for? So just as an example, you should just know, oftentimes people would take bricks and they would not mortar them. So what would they do? They would take the brick, they would stack the bricks around in a circle, and that would be an oven. Or they would use it as a fireplace. But the bricks themselves, after sitting in that place, could then be brought back and used exactly in the same form that they were used before. Because the bricks themselves were fired in a fireplace.
Can you loan a brick to another shul?
So 1 minute, that's going to be the exact comparison, okay? But as finu, you can't lend them. Hani mili ba'atikta. That's only when the bricks are old. What does it mean old? Doesn't mean that they're ancient. It means that they've already been in use for the synagogue. Now the Gemara is going to take a right turn over here for 30 seconds, and the right turn is with new bricks that have not been used for the synagogue. Let lamba. Now, what do those words mean? New bricks that have not been used for the synagogue, that are the bricks of a synagogue.
You bought them with the intention for the synagogue.
Excellent. So I'll give you a perfect example. Many times over the course of the summer, I've had to go to a wedding in Westdale Synagogue, and a lot of times there's no parking. If you go to the back of the synagogue, you'll see that there's the construction materials. They still have slabs of marble sitting out there in the back of the parking lot. I was thinking to myself, they have extra marble. Why they have it sitting here? They should sell it to someone for a kitchen. That is this.
Can't use it.
Right? So it's new bricks set aside for a synagogue that have not yet been used for that purpose.
The intent matters.
Excellent. Here we go. No, it doesn't have. Why? Even according to the opinion. Now let's just hit a break for a second. What would it mean that they were for a synagogue, not be used for a synagogue? So you correctly said, Jack, that if the intention was. Now let's go the part to a Gemara. The Gemara says there's an idea called hazmana milta, which means setting something aside for something already makes it milta. It's already something. Hazmana milta. Okay? Now that is a machloket amongst two different opinions in a different Gemara. Okay? So one opinion says, you set something aside for something, it's already considered part of that use. Another opinion says, no, it's not considered part of that use. So the Gemara says over here that if it's new, you'd think, maybe it's set aside for a synagogue. That's enough to make it synagogue bricks, in which case the law would be that you could sell them and get something instead of them, but not rent them out. The Gemara says no. Why? Afilu lemanda amar. Even according to the opinion that says, hazmana milta in other things, setting something aside is something. Hani mili, when is that the case? If let's say you have a person that's passed away, and you weave a shroud for that dead person. Now it's set aside for this dead person. That's what we set it aside for. Okay? Aval hacha over here, kitavuye la'arig dami. Let's say I went out and I bought thread, okay, but I've not yet woven the beged. So it's one step removed from being used. When is hazmana milta? When is there a machloket about whether setting something aside already gives it the purpose that you're setting it aside for? When the object is done, it could be used instantly for this dead body. I just haven't put it on the dead body yet. Hazmana milta, setting it aside in that case is already something which constitutes making it that object. But if it's only thread, and even if I set it aside, I'm setting it aside to make something for that dead body, there, even the opinion of Hazmana Milta would agree that does not count. Are we clear?
The bricks in the back of West Deal Shul would be able to do whatever we want with them?
So since the bricks themselves, they're not a completed object, where the only thing missing is its designation. If I have a cabinet and I decide this is going to be the Aron Kodesh of the Bet Knesset, it's finished. I just have to put the Torahs in. Hazmana, Milta, the machloket would be relevant. But if I have wood boards, done nothing with them yet.
It could be anything.
It could be anything. Right. And the fact that I'm designating it still requires it to be built. So therefore, I'm 2 steps removed from the process. There, Hazmana Milta would not be a thing. So therefore, according to everybody, if I have bricks that have not been used for the Beit Knesset, okay? And what's it called? And I'm in a situation where I want to be able to lend the bricks. The halacha would be even new bricks could be lent. Because right now, it doesn't have any connection to the Beit Knesset itself.
So intention doesn't matter.
Intention doesn't matter according to anybody when it's not yet usable for the object you're designated it by, just that it hasn't actually been used.
Got it.
When you're in a preparatory stage, you can't say, I'm setting aside this string, which you'll then need to make into a beged, which will then be used upon your designation. Okay? So therefore, the Gemara is now giving us this piece. Now, the reason why I told you we set you up with all those questions is because the Gemara effectively, I don't know if you noticed, is basically addressing all those questions, but without really addressing them. And the Rishonim are going to use these Gemarot that we just saw. They're using them in order. That was not Hazmana Milta because it was not yet prepared. It was 2 steps away from being designated as the answer, but now we are 1 step away. So therefore, the Gemara says, Lekaman da Amar, no one would say that you have Hazmana Milta in that case. Okay, let's go one more. Matana, the Gemara says, okay, according to that, Matana, what if you have a case where there is a present? So the people of the community are giving the Beit Knesset as a present to someone. Pligi bar Rav Acha veRavina. Rav Acha and Ravina argue on what the halacha is. So let's say the community decides to gift a Beit Knesset to somebody. Chad asar, v'chad shareh. One makes it illegal, one says asur, one says mutar. But we don't know which one, that's why it just says, so we know that they had a machloket, we don't know which one says what. Which says the Gemara, man da'asa, the person that says that it's asur, bahai tifka kedushateh. The person that says that you can't give a Beit Knesset as a gift to someone and let them use it for their secular purposes, okay, for whatever they want to use it for, they say, with what will the Kedusha go off? What's the Kedusha going to land on? When you have money, when you've swapped it for something, so the Kedusha moves from the Beit Knesset to this other object, okay? But when you give it as a gift, so you don't get, the community is not getting anything in return for the Kedusha to land on. So if he's going to now use it for his sacred purposes, what does the Kedusha go to?
What about accepting when we have like at the wedding when you pass the handkerchief and they accept it? Would accepting it remove the kedusha?
No.
It wouldn't.
The Gemara over here is saying this opinion is saying there's nothing for it to land on. So therefore, in other words, if I'm transferring the kedusha from something
money
out of this, where is it going to? Okay? The Gemara says, what's the other opinion? The other opinion is, Uman Deshari, and the person that allows it says, if not for the fact that this person would be giving benefit to the community, we would never have gifted him a synagogue. That's not something that happens on a Tuesday afternoon. Do you know what we should give a synagogue to? This random guy. It's only because, as an example, the person is a rabbi to the community. The person is a chazan. The person is he gives a lot of money, a lot of effort to the community. So in order to, so to speak, pay him back, we're giving the synagogue. So there, in effect, the other opinion holds, matana is like a sale. Why? Because the thing that you paid for the shul was the monetary value of your gift, of what you're giving them, or of whatever. So therefore, in a case of a matana, when they gave it to somebody, the reason why they gave it to someone is clear for a specific reason. Since they gave it to them for that specific reason, therefore, that's what the Kedusha goes on. Now, by the way, sneakily, I don't know if anyone paid attention.
Calling Mars.
Okay, well, let's, 1 second here.
Because they're giving it to the person and they're getting benefit because he's gonna, it's a good thing that they gave it to him. He's happy that he got it, or they're happy.
It's that the question was, what is the community getting from it? The Gemara's answer is, whatever the reason was you gave it to him in the first place, that's what the community is getting from it.
Because you're happy you're giving him the gift.
It's not the happiness.
donated
It's not the happiness. There is a tangible thing that he's giving for the synagogue.
The reason is transfer.
Not the reason why logically they're doing, the practical application of it. So in other words, like let's say as an example, the synagogue would decide to give me this synagogue. What reason could they have for giving me the synagogue? The second opinion says, even if I paid them nothing, the amount of hours that I put into the people, into working with the people, that would be considered the money value or the thing upon which the Kedusha rests. Okay?
Rabbi,
Yes.
does this help us understand why we can have like naming rights for a synagogue and like why we can name one part of the shul something and another part of the shul something else, or not even relevant?
I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth. Optically, yes. Practically, no. There's no one that thinks, as an example, that if they donated this midrash, the synagogue was building a synagogue and they, someone sponsored the midrash in memory of their mother. There's no one that thinks like, the guy could come in 6 months' time and say, listen, my son-in-law just moved to the city, has no place to live. I need you guys to take the stuff out because he and his wife are moving into the midrash. No one would entertain that.
Yeah.
There's no question that it's not a question of ownership. It's a question of the respect of having that dedication be in his name. Now, by the way, what would happen if he dedicated the money and the synagogue decided after he donated the money, after we use the money, we're not that comfortable with putting anyone's names in the synagogue, so we're not putting up your name.
Money back.
The halacha would be that the guy gets his money back.
Yeah.
Why? Because he gave it on the assumption that so there is something that he's getting, but it's not ownership of the room.
There
Right?
were some places that had lifetime seats, and then after 20 years, they said, "We're done. It's gone. You got to start again." Is that a violation of?
So that wouldn't be a question for this Gemara.
Okay.
That would be a question, first of all, for Mars Mystery. But second of all, that would be a question, right?
Good segue.
There you go. That's a question of legalities. As an example, I'll bet you any money in the world, there is legal precedent for the term lifetime. So as an example, when the lottery says that you win a lifetime, a check of $1,000, how long is a lifetime? I have no doubt that is not an ambiguous term that has been fought in court and decided.
So it's fine.
You win a lifetime supply of hot dogs. What does that mean? Let's say I choose to build a home for me and my children built out of hot dogs. So what is a lifetime usage of hot dogs? How about if I decided that I want to make, I want to build an entire theme park dedicated to hot dogs. Could I say that is lifetime usage? There would be laws in place governing what the normal usage of that term would be, and I would be willing to bet anything that there is a normal definition of what a lifetime is described as.
Can I ask a question about this Gemara?
Please, go ahead. If you think you're supposed to have clarity yet, you're not. We're almost there. Are you asking on the sacred status?
No, I was going to make a comment about the fact that a gift is not a sale. I don't think it's a sale, and I think that wouldn't you say that the item, whatever it may be, I was going to get into the sacred status. So why don't you go?
Okay, so let me review because the first part of your question is actually is poignant. Morris, that is the point of Rava's comment. Rava is saying, after I just told you 30 seconds ago, the first comment of Rava, that you could sell it but not rent it, now Rava tells you a different law, which is called the gift law. Gift law indicates that gift law is not the same as what's it called? As sale. So the Gemara is now asking, how would one look at a gift with regards to a Bet Knesset? Is a matana the same as a sale or not? One opinion says, not allowed a matana. You know why? It's not a sale. And we said sale good, everything else no good. The second opinion says, no, on some level, a matana inherently is a sale. In this case. Not that every gift is a sale. But as an example, when you give a holiday gift to the guy, to your doorman, on a certain level, the reason why you're doing that is because he's providing you with a service. And even though he gets paid for that service from my building, which by the way, I'm also actually paying for, there's something extra that I have with him or that I want to have with him that I want my gift to be able to evoke. So that extra nice smile when I leave in the morning, or the guy's going to make sure that, that my car is parked in the front and he's able to get it out.
It's based on hope.
Or he's not going to give me azab because the sign says that I have to call 6 hours in advance to get my car out of the garage. Now, legally, practically he could tell me, no problem, sir. We'll see you at midday. But because I'm giving him this gift, there's a service that I'm expecting to be rendered, right? Because of that matana. So since there's a value to that service, the second opinion is saying, in effect, you're right that matana is not the same as sale, because where is the money, the kedusha landing on? The answer to that is that there is a money equivalent based on the fact that this is in lieu of funds. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. Now, we've not gotten to the sanctity part of it, but I hope we've cleared up the matana sale part of it. Okay? Let's carry on. So this is really, in my opinion, and I think in Ramban's opinion, the final piece of the puzzle. Because all the way until here, we're kind of operating in the dark. And we're seeing a lot of the pieces come together, but we're not actually yet clear on what they are. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita, Tashmishe mitzvah nizrakin. Objects that are used to be able to service a mitzvah. The halacha is you're allowed to throw them out. Now there's a machloket what throw them out means. Throw them out might mean in the garbage. Throw them out might mean that you're allowed to throw them away, but not in a garbage. So like, what's the difference as an example? Imagine taking something and putting it out on the curb, to be taken to a fill. That's different than sticking it in a garbage bag that has the leftovers of your food from last night. Okay? And in fact, we'll come back to this in just a minute when we get to the second part of this Braita. Tashmishe kedusha, what about an object which is an accessory or something which supports a object of holiness, not of mitzvah, tashmishe kedusha. Those things have a higher level, and that is nignaz, that they need to be put away in giniza. Now, I want to be clear because these terms are often mixed up. Giniza means, in our terminology, what do we think it means? It means to be buried. The word nignaz does not mean to bury. Bury is kivura. Giniza means to put away. Okay? So giniza means to put away in a safe place. Burying something is a safe place. But the question is, do you need to? So when it comes to actual objects of holiness, so a pair of tefillin that is no longer kosher, or it's kind of worn out, a sefer Torah. A sefer Torah needs to be, those things need proper geniza, which is to be buried. Now what happens? You have something which is one level less than tefillin, mezuzot, sefer Torah. What happens? You have a chumash. 1 minute, we'll come to that. You have a chumash, okay? Something which is not scroll, ink, written with the holiness. That will be one step down. You have Torah sheets that you get in the mail. You'll have to throw them away or not. You have a Torah sheet that has Hashem's name on it. Still not the level of, of a Sefer Torah, but we put those things in Geniza. Not everything that we put in Geniza needs to halachically be buried. Some of it needs to be disposed of in a proper and kavod manner. But because I don't know if I'm going to put the object on the side of the road, if the guy's just going to chuck it in the back of a trash compactor, and then again it's neighbors with my chicken from last night's dinner. So therefore, people like to bring objects of holiness to the synagogue to put in ginizah. But that's not the law. And let's be clear. So there's a differentiation. When it's tashmish of kedusha, an object that works together with a mitzvah, it can be thrown away, but it can't be disgraced. Okay? Geniza, level up, Tashmishe Kedusha needs to be put in a safe place. That's not what we mean when we talk about Genizah. That is reserved for the actual object of Kedusha. Okay? But are we seeing, therefore, the hierarchy? There's burial, then there's safe place, okay? Then there's not disgrace. So as an example, let's say you had a garbage pile. Let's say you had a garbage pile that was separate from other garbage. There's no disgraceful garbage there. You're putting toys. You're putting toys there, papers, but it's not. This doesn't stink. It's not. You could put tashmishe kedusha, tashmishe mitzvah there, because I'm allowed to throw it away. Okay.
Tashmishe mitzvah would be
We'll come to it in a second. It's the Gemara right now.
What's the difference between safe place and non-disgraced?
That's what I'm trying to say. So not disgraced means, according to everybody, smelly, inappropriate, with garbage, but the kind of garbage which is not just being set aside, but it's being thrown away in a disgraceful manner. Okay? So disgraceful garbage, you can't have anything in. How about putting something away in a place, but it's not a safe place, but it's not disgraceful? That will be allowed for tashmishe mitzvah, but not allowed for tashmishe kedusha. Kedusha objects themselves need to physically be buried. Okay? Let's see the Gemara. Ask the Gemara exactly the question that Jonah wants to know. Ve'elu en tashmishe kedusha. What is tashmishe kedusha? Sukkah, tashmishe mitzvah. Sukkah, lulav, shofar, tzitzit. Now this is very interesting. Because here, tashmishe mitzvah doesn't mean the object that's used with the mitzvah. It means the object of the mitzvah itself. But when the mitzvah is no longer being done with that object. You hear that? Yeah. So in other words, sukkah during Sukkot, you can't use, lulav. But after the time when it's already not being used anymore, then it's called tashmishe kedusha, an object that was used for a mitzvah.
Burn a lulav, that's non-disgrace.
1 minute. Before we get to a place.
What is the mitzvah?
What is tashmishe kedusha? Yeah, okay. Tashmishe kedusha is something that was used for a mitzvah but no longer is. Okay? Now, what we do with things because of sigulot, because of ideas, is not the baseline halakha. So what you're referring to, burning a lulav to start the fire of the biur chametz, that's a sigula, that's an inyan.
But it's not a
that's an idea.
Thing to burn the lulav.
No, because you're using it for a mitzvah purpose. But you don't have to do that. This is the reason why I was cautioning you, is because people are already thinking, oh, that's the same as using a synagogue for a holier purpose. That's not the halakha. Okay, by a lulav. Because what did we just learn? You could technically throw it in the garbage so long as it's not in a disgrace. Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Okay.
See, so you could throw it in the pail of garbage that you're putting the chametz in, even without burning it. Okay? Now, let's move on. So what's the usages of tashmishe kedusha? The Gemara answers, deluskemi, the sack or the koracha for sfarim, tefillin, mezuzot. Now we're being very carefully here. Vitik shel sefer Torah. So the covering and the case of a Torah, of tefillin, okay, of mezuzah, right, of sifari, of the individual books of the 24 books of Tanakh. So specifically the object that covers those objects, that's called tashmishe kedusha.
We do what with these?
So those would have the higher level where they have to be. They could be put away in a safe place.
When we say that doesn't mean garbage, or that means put it in a separate bag to throw in the garbage.
So putting in a separate bag, as an example, to put with the genizah, like as an example, it doesn't need to be buried.
But it could be a separate bag.
Like let's say we have a room. Let's say we have a room in the Beit Knesset filled with tattered papers of all the sfarim that's thrown away.
Get rid of that?
Sorry?
We keep saying safe place, but I want to know where does it, how
you
do I
don't.
get rid of it?
So as an example, let's say we've now run out of place.
Right.
Let's say we now took this to the top of a mountain and stuck it in a big wooden box. It's not a disgrace.
No.
It slowly gets rained on, things happen, but it's not a disgrace that, that's a non-disgraceful garbage disposal. Right? Not garbage, but
But if
disposal.
they're going to take garbage on top of it later,
For sure it's a problem.
then it's a problem.
Yes. But the safety of the place means that nothing will happen to those objects. Okay?
Where would one get rid of it? Do they bury that then?
So burial also, what you think when something's buried in the ground, it's like putting it
disintegrates.
into a
Dig
bank,
it up.
also disintegrates.
Yeah.
But it means safe
Doing it
from
in a proper
it
way.
means safe from other things happening to it.
Got it.
In a non-natural way. Okay? Now, the last bit of Tashmishei Kedusha is Nartik Shel Tefillin, which means the case of the Tefillin and the ritzuot of the Tefillin, the actual straps. So each of these things are called Tashmishei Kedusha. Now, what's interesting here is that you might think, one second, aren't these things Tashmishei Mitzvah also?
Have an inherent.
The answer is no.
It's the scrolls. Right?
The answer is no. Now, let me ask you a question. If I asked
No,
you,
not the scroll.
if I asked you logically, the case of a Torah
Yes.
or the actual lulav,
Lulav.
Right.
We say bracha.
and yet the lulav is on a lower level than the Tashmishei Kedusha. Why?
It's natural.
No, because you're done with.
There's other examples of things that aren't natural.
No more.
A sukkah wall that I built.
Because it's meaningless. It's meaningless after the 8 days of the holiday.
No,
There's no
No,
more
it's the
mitzvah
same-
of
but it's
lulav.
the same thing with the others.
Shofar,
Yeah.
Meaningless after the end of the holiday.
tzitzit.
Tzitzit, I don't have an answer for.
Here's the answer. The answer is doing a mitzvah with something does not confer upon that thing kedusha.
Or the kedusha, right?
The act itself is a holy act, and therefore, when I'm using it, it is holy because it is a object being used in a holy act. But the object itself is not holy.
Yeah.
Okay, the sifarim, the tefillin, the mezuzot. If I'm not wearing it, it's still a scroll with God's name on it. You see the difference?
But what about
The shofar is a horn of a ram. It was a horn of a ram before I blew into it. It's the horn of a ram after I blew into it.
But it became holy because you used it.
No. So that's the thing. It does not become holy when I'm not using it because it is only a horn of a ram. It is only a palm branch.
So it goes back to the same level as it was before.
It's
Not
not
even
so much that it goes. It's not so much that it goes back.
up.
Is it never goes up?
It never goes up.
what
It
about the
stays.
leather straps of a tefillin?
Oh, so the one question is the leather straps of the tefillin. Why are those not? Why are they not tashmishei mitzvah?
They're kedusha, right?
Because it's not
The tashmishei kedusha.
You can't put them on.
No, but without the
Yeah, but-
lulav, you can't
It's
say
one-
bracha.
Yeah, but
It's
why?
one.
The same way I'm saying that just because I need something
leather.
for a mitzvah doesn't make the thing holy. So here too, the leather that I'm using for the tefillin is something that I need, but itself is not inherently holy.
Also, like this, also the covering of the.
Here's the
Torah.
answer.
You have things.
Here's the answer. The Torah gave you the way the tefillin are constructed. Ukshartem otam, right? Uritem otam. The Torah tells you it has to be, visamtem otam. You have to put them between your eyes. You have to put, how are you putting them there? How are you putting them on your arm? That means the construction of this object of Kedusha is in a way where you could fulfill the mitzvah with it. Do you understand that?
So what about sukkah?
Sukkah, the Torah is telling you that you need this for the mitzvah. There was never a time that the Torah said, and the sukkah is itself holy.
Yeah, but a Torah case, it's not from the Torah.
Yeah.
It's not about the fact that it's from the Torah, because let me explain. There's two parts here. One is the Kiddusha itself. The second is Tashmishei Kiddusha.
What's tashmishei?
Tashmishei Kiddusha means the thing that's used for the object which is Kadosh. So over here, it never said that the straps of the tefillin are Kiddusha,
Is that the batim?
but they are Tashmishei Kiddusha.
What's the
Now, so you understand, wait 1 second, Morris, I want you to understand the differentiation I'm making. Everything else is Tashmishei Mitzvah because you're using it for a mitzvah. Here, the tefillin themselves are the scrolls of God's name. The way they are put on, is delineated in the Torah as the tashmish of the kedusha. So therefore, that is the tashmish of an object of kedusha. Sefer Torah, tefillin, mezuzot, all of those things. We're told how to put them up. That's the mitzvah that you, to be perfectly clear. There is a kedusha aspect to tefillin, and there's a mitzvah aspect to tefillin. The mitzvah aspect of tefillin is to wear an object of kedusha.
But what about tzitzit?
Wait, let that land.
Okay.
You got that? The mitzvah of a shofar is not to do a mitzvah with an object of kedusha.
Yeah.
Is that clear now? Yeah. So therefore, the ritzuot, which I'm using in the mitzvah of putting on tefillin, are still the tashmish of a object which is holy whether I'm wearing them or not. Is that, are we understanding each other now? Okay, so tashmishe kedusha means anything which is used for the honor, for the, one would imagine, for the protection, but we'll see not like that soon, okay? For the, which is of use for the object of kedusha. Now, why am I saying this, and why is this relevant? Because there is no off time to an object of kedusha. That's the fundamental difference. The object of a mitzvah is a chefetz of mitzvah when I'm performing the mitzvah. If I'm not performing the mitzvah, there isn't any holiness to it. Kedusha has kedusha always. So therefore the tashmish of kedusha was given a higher standard for the way you have to dispose of it. Okay?
So what about the covering of a Torah? I don't understand that one.
Well, the covering of a Torah is also for the sake of honoring the Torah, which the Torah needs to be. From the Torah, you have to give kavod to the Torah. The Torah obligates us to respect and to give honor to the Torah. So therefore, something which is put on a Sefer Torah is the usage of, the tashmish of kedusha. Now that we've got...
Can I give an example of something?
Go for it.
I drop a talet. I may not kiss it, but I drop tefillin. I kiss them when I pick them up
Yes.
to signify the kedusha of them.
Yes.
The lack thereof.
Now today, lots of people will kiss even a sidur. You'll kiss talit. We'll kiss an object of mitzvah. And I'm not saying that there's something wrong with that, but everyone understands that you have to kiss the tefillin as a higher level than the talit. Is that right? Does that make sense? No one thinks that if you drop your talit, you have to fast.
Drop it to the right?
Wow.
Wait, you drop your tefillin?
You see?
Or-
Yeah.
You drop your tefillin. There's an approach to say that you'd have to fast. Depends on if the person on his ability, how it's going to affect him, how if he dropped it in a case, how high he dropped it from, etc., 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 etc. But no one discusses. There's not even a question of giving tzedakah money, of learning extra Torah. No one talks about that when it comes to dropping your lulav, your talet. Okay, all right. Now that we've come all this way, if you look at the Gemara's evolution, you might think that the Gemara just decided to go to this discussion as a roll-on from our earlier discussion about what you do with the synagogue after you decide to sell it. But Ramban asks many of the types of questions we asked at the end of last week's session. I don't understand. If something is holy, so then where does that holiness go? If you're telling me that holiness has to go to somewhere, and that seems clear, because the Gemara is saying the two opinions of the Matana, I don't understand. Let's say there's a benefit that the people get from it. I get that has a monetary value, but it doesn't actually have a physical monetary presence. So let's say the synagogue gifted me the synagogue, and we said before, it's kind of like a sale, because in lieu of the money, I'm giving these hours. Yeah. But the hours are not a physical thing that holiness could rest on.
You said it's evoking something. That's what I'm taking from.
Yes, let's say there is an evocation of. Yeah. But there's nothing for the Kedusha to go onto. It's a theory.
Is the synagogue like a talet?
Sorry?
Isn't the synagogue like a talet? You're only using it during the time you're doing a mitzvah.
Here we go. So 1 minute. But before we get to the fact that we're bringing this in as the baseline for what a synagogue actually is, You see, you could have read this Gemara, finished with the synagogues and been like, okay, I have no idea what's going on. Is it sacred? Is it not sacred? Does it go to the bricks? Does it go? But if you could sell it for the synagogue, how come you can't then take the bricks and use them for another synagogue? That's exactly the same as selling it for a synagogue. What do you do? How come Rava wants to plant on the place of the synagogue, and the rabbi is telling him to go get the people together, and then sell the synagogue, and then if they sell it together, then he could use it for planting. But what do you mean? But where did it go? Oh, it went to the sale. So it went to the sale. So it makes a difference who sells it? Why does it make a difference who sells it? How could there ever be a scenario where we could sell a synagogue with the people and the committee, and then you could go drink beer with the money? I don't understand. Where'd it go? Where'd the Kedusha go? So what? So you agreed. So we were left with many, many questions. The way the Ramban is understanding is that this is not a disjointed discussion about Tashmisheh Kedusha and Tashmisheh Mitzvah, but rather the synagogue itself is somewhat between a Tashmish Kedusha and Tashmish Mitzvah. Why?
Har HaMoriah has Kedusha.
Har HaMoriah, no connection.
Why?
Because that's Bet HaMikdash. This is a synagogue.
That's the place.
You can't compare.
You can't say
Can't, no, you
you're
can't
not
compare.
saying the shul has its
Can't
inherent
you
Kedusha.
can't compare.
The shul doesn't have inherent
You
Kedusha
can't,
to it?
not at all.
Really?
Not a comparison at all. We'll get into why. We'll get into why in just a bit. But the Bet HaMikdash is not a good place to use. Anytime you're trying to find the most extreme example of Kedusha in the world and say, how come everything is not like that? You're going to come up against some resistance, right? But let's try and understand. Let's try and understand what Ramban. Let's try and understand how Ramban is explaining. He says like this: the Bet Knesset is not itself. It doesn't achieve the concept of kedusha. Now, Ramban. Okay. Now, the first thing we trying to understand, and this is really why this is such an important thing. You're like, what? How can the Bet Knesset not achieve kedusha? All the prayers, all the learning. True. Shofar is very holy. Lulav, mitzvah deoraita. These things are huge mitzvot. Tzitzit, wow. That doesn't mean that the object itself becomes holy. It means that the object, during its time of use, is something which is holy because of its functionality to the mitzvah. And therefore, during that time, there are laws governing how you use it because the object becomes a chefetz shel mitzvah, an object of mitzvah. Okay? Now, even though that object is no longer holy, the shofar, the talit, after you use it, what do we say about tashmisheh mitzvah? You can't chuck it in the garbage can with why? It's a ram's horn. Nothing here. The answer is, once it has this level, some level of kiddusha that it's achieved, already there's an idea that you can't denigrate that object. Okay? So now that we understand that our baseline for a Devar Mitzvah is lulav, shofar, all those things, okay? We now come to a synagogue.
It's the same.
Because what is a synagogue? It's not Kedusha, it's not a Torah scroll, okay? It's not a Torah scroll, but it's also not an object that has an end point to its mitzvah observance. Because at any given point, someone could come into the synagogue and use the synagogue right now.
Not if it's being rented or used in another.
So hold up, before we get to rent, let's try and baseline understand what is a synagogue. Therefore, a synagogue, after it's finished being used, cannot be used for something degraded. Why? Because it's just like tashmish mitzvah. Can't throw it in the garbage. Can't use it for something degrading. You would be allowed to use it for something which is secular, but not degrading. Why? Because it's tashmisheh mitzvah. Except for the fact that in a synagogue, because of the fact that it stands as the structure that it is, at any given point, could again be used as a synagogue. So therefore, Jonah, to now go back to where you were, in a certain way, effectively, even in every scenario, kind of carries with it the idea that the synagogue is basically just being rented.
It never loses it's never loses.
You see that?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, because it's used for
Because even if you sold it, it could potentially be again used as a synagogue, and therefore at no point can it be used in a degrading way? So when you sell that synagogue to someone, what are they allowed to do with it? They could use it as a warehouse. They could use it as, could they make a bedroom in there? Could they put a bathroom in the? Probably not.
Because like a shofar,
Wait,
it
why?
never loses its mitzvah's act of mitzvah.
And therefore,
once it's used
once it's used for mitzvah, it deserves to be treated with respect.
Okay.
But it's not holy. It's not holy.
What about selling it?
Hold on.
this
Now that we understand the synagogue like that, now we go back in our minds. Okay, what did Rava want to do? Rava wanted to take the area of the synagogue, a place where the synagogue was, and he wanted to plant over it.
You have to move the mound respectfully.
Right? 1 second. No. He wanted to plant right there.
Oh.
So that Ravina, his rabbi, told him, one could argue that that's not a secular use, that that's actually a disgrace. And I was thinking to myself afterwards, what do we say about the Beit HaMikdash? One of the most painful sentences of the Beit HaMikdash is Tzion Sadeh Ticharesh. That when the prophet is talking about how Beit HaMikdash is going to be destroyed, etc., it says that they're going to turn the Beit HaMikdash into a field and plow it. So you see, like the harshest dig was the fact that, ironically, that he was going to dig and then plant something there. Said Ravina, no, you got to go and get it to them to sell it to you in front of the townspeople, and then you can plant it there. But if that's the case,
Why does it lose its status at that point?
why does it lose status at that point? The answer is as follows, and this is why the whole issue of the townspeople, the committee does something without the townspeople. The townspeople does something without the committee. In either scenario, we don't know that this was done with their whole heart. In which case, if either the committee is not on board or the people are not on board, there's a chance that maybe they say, you know something? We never agreed in the first place. We should go back there. We should go back to the original site. We should build the synagogue. We should pray, buy it back, pray in the synagogue again, okay? So long as you don't have the full consensus of the people, so we're always wondering, maybe they're still going to use it, in which case, it cannot be taken out of its possible to use again for a mitzvah
A
status.
sale removes the Kedusha status. So if
No, not every case.
if I sold the
Why?
shofar-
Why? Because let's say the committee members sold it without the people.
Right, I'm saying a full and agreeing sale.
But a full and agreeing sale, what would we say in that scenario? The people are saying, you know what? We're not going to pray here anymore, and we're not coming back. What gets them to say that?
The new shul.
Before the new shul, the fact that they have the money to build a new shul.
Got it. So if I sell the shofar, does that remove its inherent mitzvah status?
So again, to the point where we would allow you to denigrate it,
Yeah.
right? Allow you to denigrate it, that the halakha would be, as we said earlier,
No.
yes, once its status of mitzvah is completely uprooted.
Ah.
Okay? Once it's completely uprooted, then you would say that you're able to do it. Now, I don't know, and this is where it gets a little fuzzy. I don't know if there's a level at which, because I think that there's opinions that say that even the opinion that says you could throw it in the garbage, we said, but not in a disgraceful manner.
Right.
So that means that even though it's not in its mitzvah state, it's not going to be used again for its mitzvah, still it can't be disgraced.
Like it's teaching you how to-
But 1 second, but we created a difference between Genizah and there, which means that there's levels of disgrace, effectively. There's a level of disgrace. You can't turn a synagogue into a brothel. Can't turn a synagogue into a bathhouse. Even after they agreed. That's what it would seem like. Okay? Even after. But you could use it for a secular purpose. Unless you don't have full agreement, in which case you can't even use it for a secular purpose. You see, are we understanding now? Now that we have Ramban, we're starting to understand this idea of a Beit Knesset, and that so long as there's a decision, a full-throated, full agreed-upon decision to move on, it's a chefetz of mitzvah after its use. Until such point, it's still in the usage of a mitzvah state, and therefore it has to go up in holiness in order to move on. Now we have the Ramban, we have a much fuller understanding of the Gemara up until point. Now, let's go back in our minds. We have one example which seems to be difficult. You have an old synagogue. The guy asks, can I take the synagogue apart, use the bricks
Build a new one.
for the new synagogue? In fact, we even had a Gemara just now that said that the old synagogue,
Only
the
bricks
old
we use
bricks.
for the old synagogue.
Well, what did we say? You can't sell them, but you could use them. You could use them for a new synagogue.
So that means we're taking an old to the new.
When did we allow you to use the old bricks? Remember, let's go back. You're allowed to sell the bricks of a synagogue, but you can't lend them. That's when they're old. But, right, when they're new, then you can do whatever you want with them. That means that when the synagogue bricks had been used before, you're allowed to sell them.
Yes.
Clear.
Yes.
You just can't rent them.
Right.
So, what would you sell them for? What would you sell them for?
Holy purpose.
Someone else is going to use those bricks for something else.
Yeah.
What would you get in return? Money to use for the synagogue. Why is that different than the guy telling you, I'm going to build a new synagogue with these bricks?
Right. You can sell the bricks on the city.
Because,
The answer, I believe, is that at least when there's money here, there's something that allows the people in their minds to move on from the Kiddusha of that, because it goes on to the money. Whereas when the guy says I'm going to use the bricks for something else, as he's destroying the bricks, there's a moment in time where the brick is no longer part of the old synagogue and not part of the new. That means that there's nothing that concretizes the split between what was and what will be. And therefore, Ravina's question is answered in that way. So the question of planting is a question of disgrace. The question of rebuilding is a question of the fact that there's nothing for it to go on in the meantime. By the way, you know what they could have suggested to him? Buy the bricks.
Right. I was gonna say. Right.
right, sell them the
Sell
bricks
this-
and then use it for that.
Why didn't he ask them about that? Ostensibly because
He answered that question.
he didn't have the money to buy the bricks. That's the ostensible answer, to this question. And by the way, so I was thinking to myself, that's silly. Just do a legal contract where he buys all the bricks of the synagogue for $1. The answer is, remember, the whole reason why we need the money is for the people to feel like it's okay that we don't have that, we have this.
Right.
If you gave it to him for $1, what are you relying on? The fact that he's going to build it. So again, it boomerangs back to the fact that you're trying to transfer that peace of mind that we don't need this place, we'll never use it again as a synagogue, into something physical, tangible, real. Again, you're relying on him completing the job. So the same way it doesn't work without the dollar sale, it doesn't work with the dollar sale.
Is this because
It would only have worked if he would have paid full price for the bricks, and then he could have then sold them those bricks for the new synagogue. He could have done a trick like that. That trick would have worked. Did you hear that trick I just said?
No.
Pay full price for all the building materials of the old synagogue. Then go and build the new synagogue. Then sell the new synagogue to the community for the money that you paid for the bricks that would have worked.
Yeah.
But ostensibly it doesn't work because he didn't have the money, and the rabbis understood that he didn't have the money from the fact that he asked them if he could do the swap instead of the money. Okay.
that's only when the town owns the shul. In this case, the townspeople don't own the synagogue, right?
In which case?
In today,
Well, it depends on the community. Like, as an example, I would say that if the community had a disagreement today with the foundation about what the building should be used for, and they decided to do something, the foundation could tell them to go jump in the lake.
right? Because they own the.
And they probably would. They own it. This is theirs.
Right.
At no point has there been a transfer of that to the people of the community.
'Cause
That's
even
never
though it
happened.
Supports the synagogue.
And that happens in many synagogues, by the way. A lot of the Torahs in the Ark don't belong to the synagogue either. People give them on loan to the community, and that's how they have. However, how about in Brooklyn, where the community gets a building fund,
Right.
and then they go and buy a property? Who owns that? The community does.
Wow.
Right? And that's where it gets really sticky, because now you have a committee deciding that they want to sell the building.
Whoa.
And I, Mr. Stakeholder number 372, is saying, what do you mean you're going to sell the building and move it over there? That's 25 minutes further from my house. Even though, in terms of the community, right? So you understand, that's where it gets sticky. And that's why you have to agree to who the committee members are, Are the townspeople there when the sale happens? Okay, let's move on. Okay, you know what? We've actually run out of time. The Gemara now is going to give us a bunch of halachot from Rava on how to understand what tashmishe kedusha are and what's called tashmishe de tashmishe, the usage of. Okay, so we'll go with the second round removed, and it's so. What's beautiful about it is it's so immediately relevant, and we're like pointing at the walls and this, as we go. Okay, Hazaku Baruch.